Good morning, my creative friends, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan, and we gather live here Monday to Thursday at 7 a.m. Mountain Time to create in community, talk about all things life, love, and art, and where I share my own creative practice and some of my thoughts about life, creativity, and this month, we're talking a lot about self love and how we can use our creative practice to connect to different aspects of ourselves. And I'm super excited because in a couple of weeks, I am hosting a new weekend mini workshop called Color Coded Emotions, where I will be sharing how to connect color to our emotions to be able to name and reconcile ourselves with all the different feelings that we experience. And it made me think about how really being with our emotions is a path to self-love. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Good morning, Mary. Welcome. And I found this book by Dr. Seuss when my son was itty bitty. It doesn't feel like Good Morning, Judy, a normal Dr. Seuss book because it doesn't have your traditional Dr. Seuss illustrations in it. And what's so interesting about this book is that Dr. Seuss, Buenos dias, amiga, is that he wrote this in the mid 70s. And when he wrote this book, he knew that he needed to find an illustrator. And that actually didn't happen until after his death. So this was a version that was published in the 90s by a husband and wife creative team who did all of the illustrations along with the help, I believe, of Dr. Seuss's daughter, or Theodore Geisel's daughter. And I remember reading this to my kids when they're little. It's even all chewed up from where I think my son was chewing on it when he was teething. But I remember, good morning, Nikki. Great to have you here this morning. But I remember reading this to my kids and finding it not just helpful for them, but helpful for myself as well, of really starting to understand all the different shades, tones, nuances, and gradients of the different emotions that we feel. And I love reading this book out loud and putting a lot of feeling and emotion into it. And yet he assigned colors that were personal to him, right? And so we don't all share the same color psychology. So in my upcoming mini workshop, Color Coded Emotions, there's a link in the description below this video to that. It's a $17 mini course. We're going to look at what colors mean to us and how can we use color to really understand how it is that we're feeling, to name what we're feeling, and to get a sense of who we are being in the moment. But it got me thinking about what are some different ways that we can talk about emotion and self love. So I would love for you to join me in Color Coded Emotions, which was inspired by Dr. Seuss. And we're going to be a little bit inspired by Dr. Seuss as well. So here's our inner child page that I created yesterday. And I think I'm wanting to maybe do a little more writing and journaling on this page. It's not feeling quite finished. And I put some blue down on this page over here. And I found this silhouette of a woman. I literally just did a Google search for woman sitting silhouette. I had drawn one in another journal and really liked the impact of it. And so I'm going to be working with this silhouette. I love using silhouettes in my art, and there's a lot of different ways that we can use them. And I think I'm going to use her to do what's called a redactive, or some people say reductive painting, where we're going to paint a background and then use this cut out to sort of block out a figure. So it's a fun process, and I'm still trying to decide if I want to do that here or maybe on a different page. But over this week, I've been talking about my 6 pillars of a radiant life. And one of those pillars is what I call deep experience. And what deep experience means is allowing ourselves to be with all of our emotions and feelings. And emotions and feelings are not the same things. And there's a guy named Robert Plutchik who sort of coined the wheel of emotions, which is this amazing wheel that helps you understand kind of the nuances of different emotions. And he said there were 8 core emotions. I don't know, see if I can remember them off the top of my head. I should have looked them up. Anger, trust, fear, joy, surprise, disgust. And that each of those has a variety of nuances and expressions of that. And so emotions are almost like the categories or the labels that we put on things, and feelings are the actual expression and embodiment of those emotions. And they can be sometimes triggered by a current experience, or a current experience can trigger a learned emotion. And I'm going to go into a lot of detail in this in color coded emotion. But why is this connected to self love and this theme that we're working with today? I do kind of like having this adult here with this sacred circle design sort of flowing over both of the pages. So I'm thinking I'm going to go with this. So I'm going to fold this back for now to get it out of the way. But when I think about what does it mean to be more loving to myself, and I'm just moving things around to make it a little easier to work on. Good morning, Marion. Great to have you here. So again, I've got this silhouette of this woman, and I did just a quick Google search for woman silhouette, I think facing backwards or sitting, woman silhouette sitting, and printed it out to fit in my journal. And so this is what I'm going to be working with today. But first, I'm going to start in my favorite way with just some words and some marks. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to create kind of a fun, chaotic page. And then we're going to use this silhouette to bring our figure onto the page and probably add some, maybe some patterns and some writing. So it's going to be a fun, playful approach. But there's an element of seriousness to this as well, because when I think about what stops me from being kind, compassionate, and comparing, and kind, compassionate, and caring towards myself, it's my thoughts, not my feelings and emotions, but my thoughts. What am I thinking about myself? And when I allow myself to acknowledge the thoughts and then understand the feeling underneath that thought, judgment, sometimes disgust. We've all had those moments when we look in the mirror and go, ooh, I'm not liking what it is that I'm seeing there. And becoming present to our thoughts can help us then be present to the emotions and allow ourselves to just be more mindful of what we're saying to ourselves, which is why, for me, part of the path to self love is that pillar of my 6 pillars of a radiant life, which is deep experience. Deep experience. So I'm just going to get some words down on the page right over the top of this paint. And that's deep experience of my thoughts and my emotions, right? My thoughts, my feelings, and my emotions, because there is a distinction in there. And I love how Brene Brown talks about this, and we talked about this a lot in our uh, last season of the creative stretch about learning the language of human experience, learning to map the language of our own human experience. And the more that we are bringing to the conscious surface thoughts, feelings, and emotions, the more we can manage them, deal with them, the more we can fall in love with ourselves and have compassion for ourselves. And so, some of the things, when I allow myself to experience feelings, I have more compassion, I have more acceptance, I treat myself with loving kindness and respect. Sometimes it's not even about changing the feelings or emotions, but just simply about acknowledge how are we in the moment, right? It's acknowledging how we are in the moment. So again, just scribbling a few of these words on here. I'm kind of addicted to circles. So I just want to get some of my own marks down on the page. And this pen is not liking writing over the top of that acrylic paint. Maybe I'm going to get out my big chisel tip Sharpie. If you do not have one of these nice big Sharpies in your art kit, they are such a fun addition. And the more that we play with adding marks and shapes to our visual journaling pages, the more we discover what are the ones that we love the most. What are the ones that show up over and over and over again in our work? And we start to build our own dictionary of marks and symbols, our own dictionary of marks and symbols. And these are the things that begin to make your art recognizable, that and color. So, in Color Code Your Emotions, we're going to be looking at what do colors mean to us and creating our own emotional color wheel, our own emotional color wheel. And when I think about my own style and the colors that I'm drawn to, I'm so often drawn to very bright, vibrant colors. And that's a lot about how I want to feel. I want to feel radiant. I want to feel vibrant. And so we can use color to lift our moods. And then some days I'm sad or I'm mad, and the colors shift, and that shows up in my art. And so the more we allow ourselves to bring the fullness of who we are to the page and to our art, the more that we are then on this path to self love and acceptance and honoring every single aspect of ourselves without judgment. Without judgment. So now I'm just coming in with some oil pastels just because they're sitting here on the page or on the desk in front of me. Just starting to build up some layers, texture, colors. And it's fun to be able to kind of scratch through the surface and bring some of those back. So how's everyone doing this morning? You know, I'm always so appreciative of people that show up and join me live, as well as those of you watching the replay. And I'm curious, how are you this morning? What are your thoughts about treating yourself with compassion and acceptance? What are you working on this morning? Love to hear some other voices chime in. Okay, apparently I'm really addicted to circles this morning. So deep experience, being with our feelings and emotions. I think I've mentioned before the wonderful book by Danielle Laporte called The Desire Map. And it's sort of a almost an anti-goal setting book. And the book is less about what do you want to do than how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? And that's kind of where I'm sitting today with this idea of deep experience as the path to self love and being present to how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? So, how are you this morning? How are you this morning? What are you noticing? What are you thinking? All right, I've made a nice, big, messy, fun page here. So I'm going to come back over the top of this with a layer of white. And I did clean my catalyst wedge. I just soaked it in some soapy water, and then that paint just peeled right off. So I'm getting just kind of a thin layer. I don't want to lose all of those marks behind there yet. Thank you, Judy. That's helpful always for me to know. And collage is one of those interesting thing, and building up painty layers. It definitely takes a while to find your rhythm and to it's a great example of an opportunity to be loving and patient with yourself, to be loving and patient with yourself. And take your time and know that you're going to create some pages that are just muddy and that don't quite work. And just to remember, everything is paint overable. You can add collage over the tops of things. So I'm just coming back with the end of a paintbrush and just scribing through my paint here a little bit. Maybe bring a little bit of that color and that texture back again. It's drying pretty fast. I can easily go in here and just scribe in some words in the wet paint. Mary says she has an antsy feeling this morning, so watching and eating breakfast, wonderful. I totally get having that antsy feeling, and sometimes it's nice to just give yourself permission to just sit for a minute and try to get at what's underneath the antsy feeling. What's underneath the antsy feeling? All right, so now I want to come in, I think, with some black and some stencil patterns. Beautiful. Yep, I got my coffee here too, Blanca, painting alongside, thinking about emotions and color. Grab a makeup sponge and wondering if I still have some stencils over here. I do. And there's something again about circles that I seem to be very drawn to. And remember, when you're working with stencils to build up the layers of a page, you don't need to use the whole stencil as it is. Use parts of the stencil that also helps to make some of those patterns and designs your own. All right. So we're getting exactly what I want, is kind of um, a fun, just painty mixed media background here. Judy hasn't picked a word for the year yet. So, one point of entry to that, Judy, is how do you want to feel this year? Right. And, what's a feeling or emotion word that would support you in going through the year? So, my word is compassionate action, my two words. And so, compassionate action, if I make every decision from a place of self compassion, then my actions shift and change. And I'm actually very much in that energy of self love, acceptance, etc. So just thinking about that. Marion, are you getting your house all cleaned up if you're still there and put back together? Things warming up again? All right. I love this leafy pattern, so maybe I'm just going to add a couple of these in here as well. And again, working with stencils, keeping that paint pretty thin. And my paint underneath is still damp too, but you don't want to goop up your makeup sponge or your brush. So the less paint that you use, then the flatter and neater and cleaner those stencils will be. Okay, I'm enjoying where this is going, and I'm thinking about what it needs next. I think I might need to hit it with my hair dryer quickly. So I like the shapes and the colors that are here, but I want to bring even a little bit more color out. So I'm just going to put in a few patches of color here on the page. Again, I'm going to get my paintbrush nice and dry. And this, my favorite yellow, well, it's got some red in it now, so it's kind of orangey, but this is just about done. So I'm just going to bring back in some patches of color. And I'm sort of keeping with the same palette that I have underneath. That helps my layers to feel more harmonious on the page as well. So I'm going to bring in that yellow, maybe a little bit of purple back to our complementary colors, and a little bit of that blue that was underneath that I started with as well. Maybe some of this nice lavender. I'm just cleaning off my brush a little bit. I'm not even trying to get my brush dry. And I'm just putting the paint right on the palette. I mean, right on the page. I'm not putting it on the palette. Sometimes I might wipe it off on the palette if I were to get more on the page than I wanted. And again, I want to keep these layers pretty sheer because I'm not wanting to lose the marks and things that are underneath. So like catalyst wedge or just a old gift card or old credit card are great for this. So it's a very colorful page. I love that I can still see the textures, and I continue to go back because as the paint gets wet again, it activates the layers underneath, and I can continue to bring back some of the marks and colors that are underneath, which just continues to give me some of those wonderful, wonderful layers. And a skewer, like a barbecue skewer, works great for this. But what I have here is just a end of my paintbrush. I'm wanting to just keep these circles coming back. Something about, when I think about color and emotion, so these are happy, bright colors again, which is how I want to feel, happy and bright. They're intuitive choices in the colors, not necessarily intentional choices. I'm feeling like maybe I want to try a little bit of green, even though I don't have green on there anywhere else. So I'm going to try just a spot of green and see if that's going to work. And if not, we'll just paint over it. So again, everything is paint overable. And I think it's that brightness that I'm longing for. I'm definitely finding myself longing for color right now. When we're still in the throes of winter. Although on some of our recent walks and even in our yard, we're seeing birds coming back, which is wonderful. It feels early because there's still so much snow and ice everywhere, but we've had some of our red-winged blackbirds showing up. We saw a beautiful merganser, which is a duck, on our walk the other day. And it's quite beautiful, but it's not colorful. And I find that my eyes long for color. Oh, you got snow, Kay? I'm sorry. Yeah, it makes us long even more for color when there's that blanket of white everywhere. Blanket of white. And it's quite beautiful, but it's not color. It's not color. It's a great time of year to visit if you live someplace where there's a lot of snow, or any time really, to visit a museum, to go fill yourself up with color and art, or go to the store and buy yourself fresh flowers. We bought a beautiful bouquet of burgundy and yellow flowers at Sprouts on the weekend. And every time I walk by, I just pause to enjoy that color. All right, so we have kind of a playful page here, kind of matching the colors that are here because this is going to get pasted down over the top eventually. So there becomes a story across the two pages. I love doing that in my journals, even though I've created these pages separately. And now I have a choice to make. So when you do this kind of painting, and I think that there is enough on there, that I can either paint out the background and let her be painty on the inside and add patterns and designs to her, or I can paint the figure white and have the background stay playful and busy, which is kind of what I'm feeling like. So I am going to grab a pencil, and I may do a couple of versions of this silhouette. Maybe I'll do a different one tomorrow to just show you some of the fun ways. And again, this is there's so many creative ways to get figures into your visual journaling pages without having to draw. Okay, so I know you can't see that, but I have traced my figure in here. And I'm going to paint her white, and then I'm probably going to paint another color over the top of that as well. And I can already see where I'm going to want to bring some different marks and layers to my background around her. But I loved the pose of this particular character because it feels like she definitely is just sitting in some deep reflection of her experience, right? And this is kind of what we're thinking about, is reflecting on how am I feeling today and how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? So I woke up not as early as I like to, with a bit of a headache and kind of a stuffy nose. You know, not my favorite way to start the day. My body felt a little stiff and achy. I'm like, okay, this is not how I want to feel. So I did a little bit of stretching, a couple of my morning errands, taking, or chores, taking care of my cats, and made my coffee. Had a friend chat with me and ask me how I'm doing. My friends know that I'm up early, so I often have people texting me quite early in the morning, so that by the time I got down here, I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling more like myself. And of course, being here with all of you makes me happy as well. So she's still transparent. I can still see colors and shapes and marks behind her. I'm trying to decide if I want her now to be a contrasting color to my background, or if I even want to calm that background down a little bit more. But I'm wondering, I've got this blue on the page. And blue for me is a color, especially this sort of sky blue here mixing with the white, that is very calming and relaxing and grounding. And I think it's why I love being outside so much on a sunny day and get grumpy when I haven't seen the sun for a while, because I need the spaciousness and the blue of the sky and the warmth of the sun to just bring me back to myself again and again. So, as I mentioned in color coded emotions, this is what we're going to be working on. So, just sitting here painting on the page, I feel better than I did when I woke up. And to me, that's the point and the purpose of my personal visual journaling practice. So I'm just going to continue to work around this page. I'm going to calm down the background a little bit with some of that purple. Again, working in very thin, transparent layers. And these aren't super opaque paints. I don't want to lose all of the marks and the layers. But because this is about how I feel, I'm feeling the need for calm, not chaos. So yesterday was all about chaos and play, right? Was all about chaos and deep, deep play. Today is about deep experience. Deep experience. And being with myself, with my thoughts and my emotions. So the book I mentioned by Danielle Laporte was The Desire Map. It was kind of the book that really put her on the map. And it's a book that, rather than talking about goal setting, talks about how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? What are your deepest desires for how you want to feel? It's a beautiful book. It was a friend and I read it together and workshopped it together, and it was pretty powerful to look at our lives rather than through this lens of, always being busy and active and having to do more, but to really instead be in the energy of how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? Almost ready to glue this down over here. Loved bringing back just a little bit of these yellows. So one of my favorite tools in the studio that I've mentioned before are baby wipes. They are a great tool for just pushing some of that paint back, removing paint where you didn't want it, or just smoothing out layers. So I'm not completely removing any of the layers, but I'm just softening everything. So now I went from that very, very busy, chaotic page to a much calmer page. And what I'm wanting is to bring back some of these leafy shapes in the backgrounds and create just a little more contrast. Excuse me. So makeup sponge, dabbing it in the paint, dabbing it off. I think what I love about this particular, well, I love this sort of abstract leafy pattern. I think this was a stencil that was created by my dear friend Andrea Chebalou from A Work of Art Studio. But I love this leafy shape because it's such a symbol of growth and things growing. So just bringing back some of the shapes back around. Again, it just creates some of that nice contrast between the bright colors and a little bit more of that black on the page, as if she's sitting in a field of flowers maybe, looking off into the distance. And I'm going to bring back some of these dots as well. My friend Andrea loves black and white, and so she does a lot with polka dots of all kinds. All right, so I'm pleased with where this page is going. Now I am almost feeling like I'm going to want to calm that down, but I'm going to let it sit there for a minute and think about what I want to do inside of my figure. And I have a couple of options floating around in my head, one of my favorite things to do would be to add Zentangle patterns to the design. But I could also use this as a journal page and just do some handwriting and some journal prompts about self-love and deep experience and what is it that I'm feeling, or maybe add an affirmation in here: I am loving and kind to myself. And one of my friends taught me this beautiful excuse me, Reiki prayer, and about adding the words just for today to our affirmations and statements, just for today. Because when we add that comment, it kind of calms our brains down. We're not saying I need to leap all the way there, or that I need to be doing this perfectly every day, but that just for today, I will be kind to myself. Just for today, I will be kind to myself. So bringing back some of our shapes there. Just for today, I will treat myself with kindness and compassion. So just coming in with a pencil, again, just bringing back some of those marks all the way from the very beginning of the process, right? And I can see under here as well some of those original shapes. So I've got a Stabilo marks all, and I'm just bringing back those shapes just a little bit. And I'm also going to take this Stabilo marks all, and this is still a little damp, but I'm going to go around the edges of my figure here. And then you'll see when I add water, it's going to create almost like a nice drop shadow around her. Definitely got a little froggy throat this morning. My apologies for that. So I'm going to come in with a small brush, just a slightly damp brush. I'm just going to lightly go over that Stabilo marks all. Georgia, get out of the way. Oh, kitty cats are not helpful on the craft table. And that just gives her a subtle outline, makes her stand out a little bit more from the background. And now I need to decide, am I going to add some patterns? So I'm thinking I'm going to maybe do some writing around the outside of my figure and add some patterns to the inside of my figure. And do I want to do that with black or with white? If I do it with white, it's going to be beautifully subtle against that blue. And I'm probably going to want to add some white highlights to some of the other areas of the background. And I'm going to maybe glue this down, or maybe just let it be a flip up here, which is also really fun. And interestingly, this is still a little bit damp, so what I got here instead of the white line was it was actually scribing through. And so what I'm seeing is that that's not going to show up as much on there as I want, so I'll let this get dry and come in with some black. But this page definitely needs some white to brighten it up. So I'm going to come in just over the top of some of these stencils and just add a little of my own line drawing, which again takes something that was somebody else's stencil and just makes it a little bit more my own, right? We're always looking in our art to just bring our own voice to the page. Add some of that white to just some of the circles. Maybe even adding some. It's my favorite part of a piece, and I can spend a lot of time just in these final details, just adding patterns to pages. Again, we talked at the beginning about the more that you play with marks and shapes, the more you start to build your own personal dictionary, if you will, of the things that you love and why you love them and how does it make you feel. There's something for me that's very playful and childlike to just cover the page with dots and marks. And it brings me a lot of joy. It also kind of brings the page to life a little bit. Maybe feeling like there needs to be a little more yellow on this page as well. Making sure this is getting nice and dry. And not all pens are created equal when it comes to drawing over the top of your acrylics. This is, I'm going to hold on just one second. So this is a Papermate Inkjoy gel pen. This, and there's also a Pentel pen that I really like. Don't use your nice microns over the top of acrylic. It will eat your pens. But these are pretty good for drawing over acrylic, but they're not permanent. So I need to make sure that I'm really kind of at my last layer if I'm going to start adding patterns with this. And there's already this interesting circle up here in the center of her head. And my paints may still be a little too wet because what I'm getting here is scribe marks. So you guys are going to watch me just troubleshoot here, right? And figure out, what am I going to do to work around this? Am I going to let it just sort of scribe through the paint? And maybe that's where those marks are going to come from. And what happens if I just let this pen sort of scribe through the ink? It's probably not going to show up as much as I want it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a layer of matte medium over the top of this and let it get nice and dry with my dryer, and that's going to create a better surface for adding some tangles and patterns over the top of those marks. So this is just matte medium, which is great for so many. So sorry, you guys. Apologies for works as a great glue. It works as a great sealer for pages. I love that you can continue to just easily paint over the top. You can also do the same thing with clear gesso. We used some clear gesso yesterday in our page, and gesso, the clear gesso creates a scratchier surface. All right, so now I have a nice layer of matte medium over the whole thing. I'm going to put myself on mute so you don't have to listen to the dryer, and I'm going to get this nice and dry so I can draw over the top. All right. I have it nice and dry, and I'm going to come in with some patterns. And because I decided I want to add some patterns, this is going to be too busy. So this is going to get painted over one more time to calm it down. But I think I am going to come in and do some patterns on her first. And I'm going to use a permapaque, a fairly thick one. So my patterns are going to be, my designs are going to be fairly thick tipped, but I love the permapaque will write over just about anything. So I think it's going to be my best choice. A black Posca would work really well here too, but I am out of fine tip black Posca, so I'm going to just come in with this permapaque and add some doodles and patterns. Some of these may look like Zentangle patterns, some of them will be just more doodle-like. Who's still with me live? What are you thinking about color and emotions and self-love? Anybody else painting along? Already starting to love seeing the patterns and colors emerge here. It's going to change the whole look of the piece and probably take me in a new direction. But again, for me, visual journaling, the whole point of visual journaling is just being deep in the experience. Being with my art on the page. Mary, I like the background as well, but it feels like it's too busy for I'm instead of having the background pop out, the figure is gonna pop out. And so I just want to soften it. And not sure how I'm gonna do that yet, so we'll see. I'll probably be a little quieter as I just sit here and draw these patterns. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you might have. So any questions about mixed media art, visual journaling, supplies. So for me, maybe my voice might not cooperate for the last few minutes here, but for me, visual journaling is about meeting myself on the page through art and writing. And sometimes I start with journaling, sometimes I end with journaling, sometimes I begin and end with writing. But it's using my own words to sort of connect a little more deeply to the page, to the process. It's that chance to just be here present with my thoughts and my feelings. It's so fun to go through your old journals, Blanca. I love it. This particular pattern is poke leaf, and it's one of definitely my mac and cheese Zentangle patterns. I use it over and over again. Me too. Yep. Love that. But you can see already as this gets busier, right? It's going to change that. So I'm almost thinking I don't want to fill her completely with patterns. So maybe I'm going to add some journal writing in here. I'm also feeling like I really want to bring the outline of my figure out even more. What do you want? George is back. Come on, up. Sitting here with her paws on my side of my leg saying, hello, are you there? Are you paying attention? And this pen is chunky enough that I can't do any detailed work, but I may bring back some of those colors and add some colors into my figure here. And just like in Zentangle practice, learning to turn your page makes it easier to draw. So Georgia is like lying. You just off camera, you can probably see her little whiskers there trying to just be in the middle of everything. She is not helpful. And just continuing to have fun. Like for me, this the mindful piece of that just being here with the drawing on the page. All right, off you go, Missy. I don't know if the cats think that spring is starting to come, but they have been just bonkers the last couple of days. Like George is literally bouncing off the walls, getting on the kitchen counter, which she knows she's not supposed to do. Doing lots of things to try to get our attention in a negative way, just like a kid would. So just drawing kind of a messy mandala up here. Again, having just fun putting the patterns on the page. And it's so fascinating. We're here today talking about self love, being with our thoughts and our feelings. And I'm looking at this page, and my inner critic voice is feeling pretty loud right now about I don't like where this is going. You ended up messing the whole thing up. What were you thinking? You had a good thing going. And so, as I'm in this deep experience of the page, just being mindful of that voice, just being mindful of that voice. There's nothing wrong here. It's just paint and paper. But noticing how easy it is to get derailed and sidetracked by that inner critic voice. And it's part of both the gift and the challenge of creating publicly that I can't be a perfectionist. I'm not going to get it right every time. I'm going to have hiccups. My inner critic voice is going to get in the way, and you're going to get to see me work through all of that. Nikki, if you don't know about these pens, they are the bomb. It's called a permapaque, and it will write on just about anything. It's by Sakura, who makes jelly rolls and the microns as well. They come in a few different sizes and a bunch of different colors. They have a copper one that I really love, but this black is one of my go-tos, and I have a thin one and a thick one, and they're not smelly like Sharpies either, so it's definitely a favorite permapaque. I don't know if Andrea sells them in her shop, but you can get them at just about any art supply store or on Amazon as well. And I love them because they will write over the acrylic paint really nice. So I still more or less have this sort of abstract figure of this woman sitting in deep reflection, deep experience, noticing how that inner critic wants to come out to play, which just gives me an opportunity to have some compassion for myself and to just notice that voice, right? So, this whole idea of deep experience and being with our thoughts, we can't change our thoughts unless we're conscious of them, unless we're conscious of them. It almost feels like this is part of our hair here. And interesting that I really drew all these hearts at the level of her throat, which is the throat chakra is all about speaking our truth. I'm going to bring these hearts all the way down here to meet this other line. And then I think this is going to become a space for journaling. And so now you're noticing how much the figure is popping out and it's not the contrast that I want with the background. So I'm going to add another layer of paint to just to soften up the background and have my figure pop out a little bit more. And then I'm going to come back in with that blue, the little bit of green, yellow, and purple, and maybe add some marks here. But I'm thinking this is going to be some journaling or maybe an affirmation on the page, or I'm thinking, do I want to write that around the edges? Me too. There's a lot going on here, right? There's a lot going on here for sure. Nope, I think I'm going to fill her completely with patterns, and then I'm going to add some journaling around the edges of her. I'm going to soften this up with some paint. So I'm not done yet. I know we're at an hour, so I'm going to keep going here a little bit. And I think I want to continue with this just theme of growth with my favorite Muka patterns. Another one of my mac and cheese tangles that it's rare to find a Zentangle design of mine that doesn't have a few little Mukas in there somewhere. Bye, Nikki. See you tomorrow. Have a great day at work today. Loving the sort of, more graphic patterns moving up into the more floral patterns as well. Maybe bringing in even some more leaf shapes. It always amazes me, like where the patterns, or sorry, the pages take me as well, right? Like I never know when I'm starting what the end result will be. I don't know how long it'll take. All I know is that when I allow myself to just be in this deep experience of the journey, that whatever unfolds on the page is exactly what I need, and trusting my own creative process. And only through that trust am I able to soften the voice of that inner critic. She's looking pretty groovy there. Come in maybe with just some, there's a fun little Zentangle pattern called Sioux Flowers. Just some floating flowers here. Thank you, Blanca. She is beautiful. And if I can look at her and say, she is me, and I am beautiful, that this is all of the aspects of myself. I honor, love, and accept the chaos and the calm. There's some of all of that. I accept that inner critic, the role of our inner critic is to keep us safe. There was a great article this morning from the newsletter from the Met Museum in New York about a little 6-year-old girl who came home from an after school art class with this really fantastic piece of art for a 6-year-old. And the art teacher told her she did it wrong. And so this mom took to the internet, to Twitter, I think, and said, "Look at my daughter's beautiful art. Her teacher told her it was wrong. She loves art. Can you boost her confidence?" And what happens over and over again to so many people is that we have that one person tell us that our art is wrong or bad or doesn't look like something it was supposed to, and it can shut us down for our entire lives. And we start thinking as children that we're not creative, we're not good enough. So we turn our sights and interest to other things, and we lose our love of creative play because that inner judge gets internalized. And so think about how that inner critic has been with you your whole life and is really there to keep you safe from harm. And when we're in this deep experience of thoughts and feelings, just noticing that voice and when that voice shows up and reminding that voice that it's okay, that you're in charge, that you're not going to get hurt by making art, that you get to choose who you share your art with. I'm doing mine very publicly, so I don't get to choose who sees this or what the comments or feedback. So I have to have pretty thick skin in order to be able to put my work out there. And even noticing when I put my work out there and people are like, oh, that's beautiful, I have to really take that in. I have to absorb those compliments. All right, so I got to decide what I want to do with this page. And I'm almost feeling like what would happen if I came in with a layer of yellow over the background to soften that up, but to not lose the brightness. Blue and yellow are great colors together. And again, because I put that layer of matte medium down, it's going to go over this all pretty smoothly. This paint's a little dry, but this is going to bring the emphasis and focus back to my figure. Again, I'm not completely losing everything that's underneath. This is what I love about mixed media art journaling and creating layers like this. It teaches us to let go, right? It would be easy to get really attached to those places that I love and not want to paint over them. And the more that we practice letting go and building up richness and depth in our layers, the more magical our art becomes, the more rich with depth and layers. So I encourage you to check out the link in the description of the video once it goes live for color coded emotions. It's going to be a fun weekend adventure of exploring the connection between color and emotions and creating our own personalized color wheel that's going to help us connect to, think about, and work with our own emotions. All right, so I'm liking that better. My figure is popping out. I'm going to bring back the edge of her face here where some of that yellow got over the top of the black. Maybe a little bit over here as well. And then I'm going to come in and bring some of these background colors into my figure here. I don't need a lot of color on it, but maybe just some little, oop, that's a brand new yellow. Let's see if we can find a different one. I have a huge box of these here. There we go. And this is going to make my piece feel a little more cohesive. We're going to see how the Poscas do with the permapaque. I might have needed to let that permapaque dry a little bit so that it is permanent, but sometimes it just takes a while for it to dry. So all of a sudden the piece is already feeling better to me just by having yellow here and here. Bring in a little bit of that purple. And I know the richness of all these colors is underneath. Let's see. And again, I don't need to add color to the whole piece. But just adding some little pops of color just makes her feel like she's part of the page and not quite so separate from the page. Just some fun little pops of color around the page. I thought I might add some little green sparkles to the background, but you really can't see it over the top of that yellow. Very subtle. I love that I can still see a lot of this through the background, some of my white marks as well. Feels like this page ended up being definitely a little bit of a fussy page. And giving myself permission to just be fussy with it, right? To get it to a place where it's not just done, but where I'm pleased with the result. Thank you, Judy. All right. I think we need a little pop of purple down here. I'm going to hit it with the dryer so I don't smear this with my hand, and then I'm going to do some journaling around the outside and call it done for today. And I'm going to write that an affirmation around the outside just for today. I will be loving, kind, and compassionate towards myself, remembering that when we start with the, I think maybe I got too much paint in that one. When I start with that affirmation of just for today, just for today. No, none of these pens want to write on here. Everything is an experiment. All right. It's a little bit better. This is just a plain old Sharpie pen. It's so funny. I think the paint is just on here so thick, everything is just scribing right through the paint. So we're going to write with the big fat one. And I love writing around the edges of figures like this. Again, it's bringing my own handwriting back into the page. Helps me remember what it was that I was thinking about when I created the page. I don't need anybody else to be able to read it. And if I was feeling inspired, I might even fill the whole background with handwriting. So, what she's sorely missing that I can see now as I sort of back away from it is definitely bringing in those pops of white. And that's what's going to really make her feel finished and really stand out. It's like I can tell that there's something that's missing, and sometimes we have to walk away from our art and come back to it at a later time. And I'm feeling grateful for the time I do have this morning. I have a quiet morning ahead. I have a lot of work to do, but no appointments like I normally do. And so when I have these luscious, long open spaces in the morning, I do like to take advantage of them. So I'm just adding some white outlines to some of the shapes on here. It's just going to help them to stand out. Again, brighten up the page. My intention was this is a page that's just all about self-love, being deep in the experience. I was very deep in the experience of creating this page today. And the colors for me need to be vibrant and alive to really capture that. Posca markers are my friend. I love them. And putting down black and then going back over it with white will help you also create a really nice look on your pages, create a surface for drawing and adding more patterns on top of. All right, so we're going to call her done for today. So this was all about deep experience, being present to my thoughts and my feelings, my judgments, the voice of that inner critic, all the things that ran through my mind as I created this page today. And now we feel like we have this fun flow between these two pages. I am going to let that sort of stand out there, but feeling how different the energy is between being in this deep play with my inner child and then being in this deep internal experience of thoughts and emotions. It's all me, right? There are all these different sides and aspects of me. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. Extra long show today. I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. Have an amazing rest of your day.